NBC's Timeless took viewers back and forth through different eras of our history at a record pace. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby here with the costume designer, Marianne Cheo. And Marianne, tell us a little bit about, just your general reflections on the series now that it's wrapped up after 2 seasons. I mean, you basically got to design costumes for every era that there ever was in world history. So just reflect on it a little bit.
Well, when first starting the job, it was a dream job because we did get to go back in time, and the fantasy that we would be able to do something different every week and every episode. I think as time went on, it became so fast paced that it was as exhausting as it was exciting. So in reflecting upon it, I think oftentimes, how did we actually accomplish that? How did we provide those costumes, create those worlds? And I have a great sense of pride for my crew that worked on it. They were amazing. And the actors that, came and showed up with, great enthusiasm for every oddball costume we were going to put in. And, they put in the time to really, think about what their characters would be doing with it. So, I missed the show. It was very, it was very challenging, and it really pushed the limits to what I was trained to do. So, in reflecting on it, I feel it's kind of nice to not have to do it every week, but also I miss it.
Well, I mean, just tell us a little bit more about, because I think people take for granted just how difficult it is with a show such as this is, an hour-long drama series, week after week after week. Not just going to one period of time, which is difficult in and of itself, but every single week there's something different. Just talk a bit more about sort of the difficulty of having to pull that off.
Well, we have to, back in the days with movies, you'd have months to prepare for a period drama. So for us, we would get a script, and it's a matter of a couple of weeks. So we get the script, we break it down, we assign sort of different things to different departments within our department. So there would be a group of people that would just be pulling background costumes. There'd be my assistant designer, Felicia Jarvis, who was a miracle worker, who would just go and start pulling for the characters, and she is in their heads because she'd been with me since the beginning, and so that would be her focus. So we sort of divided it up, and we'd each focus on what we needed to do. We'd have a military person if it was military, and they would just deal with military. It was so broad that not one person can do one thing, and we had somebody just doing research for each individual thing as well, including myself. Felicia and I would be up till like 4 a.m, Pinteresting and sending documents to each other about different ideas that we thought would be good, and then we'd start the day just hitting that, all the while shooting, say 1940s was being shot on the Paramount lot, while we're also trying to prep for something that's got hundreds of extras from the 1800s.
Well, I mean, what are some of the, I guess, tricks of the trade that you would use to be able to, dress all those extras week after week after week, to kind of make as much use out of these costumes as possible?
First, getting the best qualified costumers that we could possibly find, and our talent pool was from young kids just sort of coming into it, that we're learning, to even costume designers that just wanted to come in and play for a little bit in between a job. So we had a really interesting mix of people that came in, and that in a way was a trick to me. It was always surprising that some of my friends would come in and do something for a week. The other thing is just knowing what, we always had to be ahead of the game, knowing what shows were going on, to know what clothes that we could get. A lot of times things were being pulled for another show. So one of the tricks of the trade was to go in and talk to different designers that had already pulled certain periods and say, can we use this stuff while we shoot this, and it'll be back to you by then. So there was a lot of finagling involved with different costume houses, with a lot of friends. And sometimes one of the tricks was to reuse certain things and redesign it. If we needed multiples in a hurry, sometimes we'd take some of the men's suits and change them up to reuse them.
There's certainly a great deal of research that you'd have to do for all of these different periods. I wonder also, though, in terms of color and texture and things like that, How did you? What were some of your ideas in that regard with all these, different episodes? Was there an attempt at a consistent color theme, or did you change it up each week?
We loosely played with it. It started in a fitting room with Abigail Spencer, my first fitting, which was very, very long. And we tried a lot of different colors on her to see what worked with her skin color, tone, her hair, like what we sort of theorized what we thought the series could look like and what we would do. And so, loosely we decided, well, we're going to do, colors are going to reflect the moods, and then certain colors will reflect characters. So we did did an attempt to do that, like certain episodes, like the one when they went back to the 60s, she's in a canary yellow dress, which is, it's about being a bird. There's a lot of things around it, but also we were so delighted that she could wear this yellow, and it was so striking within the episode. So, we did that. And then Flynn, he was always sort of, the blood was always boiling with him. So we did a lot of like, burgundies and maroons and sort of, colors that were reflective of, sort of passion and mood. And then Wyatt, had his beautiful sparkling blue eyes. So we always used a lot of blues with him, and his, character was, very military, and the color that always kind of just military to me is that navy blue. So, we played with it here and there, and it kind of gave us a way to work a palette in an episode. And sometimes the production designer would have something, and then we'd go with that. But we were often working with color and using color to bring a character forward or behind as well. So it was a big part of how we designed an episode, for sure.
You guys hopped all over the place this season. I mean, you went everywhere from like the Salem witch trials to the 1980s when Ronald Reagan had that assassination attempt on his life to, all around. So can you just talk about some of the like most challenging, specifically challenging episodes that you guys had to do this year?
Let's see. Well, just speaking of Reagan, what was challenging about that, other times we would just create our world and it didn't matter. What was particular to the Reagan attempted assassination was that we actually were trying to match the footage and match the pictures. So that brings its own complications. And then we were doing stunts, and then we needed multiples as well. So that was, it had to be the exact same thing as that, and trying to match it exactly, and having timing. Some things we could make, some things we couldn't. And so that's always an interesting challenge and a fun one to do. And I felt we did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I think people sometimes underestimate how challenging, contemporary period is. It's something that was
in our, too.
Yeah, just like in our recent past. Let's talk a bit about the finale. It was a 2-hour Christmas episode. Can you talk a bit about what went into the making of that?
Okay, well, we were doing it's a double episode. So one is the 1800s, and it's the gold rush, and we had Joaquin Murrieta, who was the inspiration for Zorro in that. So, for instance, in that particular world, we took different drawings and paintings that were depicted of that character and of the gold rush, and then we had found photos that were from that time period. So that was actually really fun. We just recreated that world, how we had the visceral feeling, and then what we could reflect in the photographs and all the minors. It was really, really great to do. And then we had our girl characters had to go undercover as men. So it's about also finding clothes that they would steal that reflected their characters. And for instance, Gia's vest was an actual original piece from the 1800s. But again, we needed multiples for riders. So we had to recreate the vest by hand painting it and remaking it for a stunt double to be able to ride a horse with. And then we did the Korean War, which there isn't much out there for that, and it was, definitely problematic having to dress, hundreds of Korean extras for that. So, and that became its own sleuthing within and around town and getting stuff made and finding, movies that maybe had done stuff at one point that all the stuff has been packed in e-crates that are being stored way out in Sun Valley. So it became this, a hunt for creating, that time period in Korea. And it was fascinating to research all of that, of course.
Knowing that this was going to be the last episode, last two-part episode, I should
Yeah.
say. What was the feeling like as you were, as you and your team were preparing this and pulling it off?
It was, bittersweet. Some of us wish we'd done Egypt or something like that. So there was that moment where it was like, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? And so, and not to say we were disappointed, it became like, a whole nother world that we got to get into that we hadn't anticipated. It was where we used to say, I don't think I can do this again every week because it was such a monster of a show. It became, oh, I wish we could do a few more episodes and explore some other areas. And we didn't even get to do that. And so there was a lot of that talk where, we really wish we could have done so many more stories that we could have told. So, bittersweet.
Right. You've worked in feature films, you've worked on episodic television. What are some of the, I guess, are there many differences on your end in terms of, workload and pace and things like that between working on something like this and a feature film?
Well, TV is definitely is much faster paced. And I feel like, I did films and was an assistant designer for many years on many big movies. Ali is always one of my favorites because we were in a different city, every couple of months, and we're setting up, breaking down, and we, culminated with being in Africa for several months. So that had, its own challenges, but I would say definitely TV it's taking all the knowledge, everything you've learned, and you have to think fast. And it's the MacGyver of costume designing, and yet you don't want to ever let go of what you've always wanted to do is doing a good job. So it's about really making it work and getting what you want out of it and being satisfied as a designer. So and I like that challenge. I've always loved it, and I like I say again, I loved what we did on that show, and I'm so proud of our crew and what we were able to pull off in 2 seasons.
And what are you working on now? I hope something that's not as many periods that you have to in one.
We decided to take the easy job now. I just finished. It's a anthology series called Amazing Stories, which is Steven Spielberg. It's a reboot for him, and each story tells it's completely different. It's like its own movie. So we took the job. It's actually has 3 costume designers and 3 production designers, which is never. I don't know when it's ever been done like that. So instead of making us, having to do everything, it was kind of nice. We had a different approach where we were all sort of sharing the same space, and I called it the costume sorority. The unique part is that we really didn't know what our scripts were going to be. So it was, I can't really say what they are, but it was kind of exciting, and we had the time to do it, and got really great directors and really great actors, and it's going to be a very interesting show. So I hope everybody watches that one.
I certainly look forward to seeing it. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your work on these past 2 seasons of Timeless.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Zach.
You're welcome. And thanks so much to you at home for watching. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below, and make sure you visit us on goldderby.com for all the latest award show news and to make your predictions.